Imagine being in complete darkness, surrounded by absolute silence, with no access to food or clean water, and with the temperature dropping ever lower. Sounds scary, right? Today we are going to explore something extraordinary. Is it possible to survive 7 days stranded in a cave? How difficult is it to face an underground environment, far from light and heat, with extremely limited resources? Throughout this report, we will analyze what happens to the human body and mind when we are in a cave. We will show you survival techniques, listen to experts, and find out if it is really possible to survive in one of the most inhospitable places on the planet. Conditions of a cave. To understand what it takes to survive in a cave, we first need to understand the conditions that exist inside one. Caves can have temperatures of between 10 and 15 degrees Celsius, with very high levels of humidity. This means that even though the temperature is not extremely cold, the cold is intensified in humid environments. The constant humidity, combined with the lack of natural light, makes this a very different environment to what we are used to. Caves are usually completely dark, with no light source to help our brains process the passage of time. Being in a cave is an experience that deeply impacts our body and mind. Not only do we lose the sense of time, but we also face other problems, such as the gradual decrease of oxygen in deep caves or the presence of toxic gases in some areas. It is a hostile environment. Physical and psychological challenges. The total darkness of a cave affects us in surprising ways. Without light, the body loses the ability to maintain a regular circadian rhythm, our internal clock that tells us when to sleep and when to be awake. Spending several days in complete darkness can be disorienting. Without light, we don't know if it's day or night, and the lack of stimuli can lead to memory loss and even hallucinations. Loneliness and isolation have a huge impact on our mental health. When we are alone in a dark, unstimulated environment, the brain seeks to create its own content, which can lead to hallucinations and confusion. This type of isolation is very different from the loneliness we experience on a day-to-day basis. Basic needs for survival. One of the first challenges in survival is access to water. In many caves, there are small springs or water leaks. However, this water is not always drinkable. To consume it safely, we need filtration and purification methods, such as chlorine tablets or portable filters. As for food, caves don't offer many options. There are small creatures and insects that might provide some sustenance, but hunting or gathering food is difficult and unreliable. The basics of surviving in a cave are staying warm and finding a reliable source of water. It is also important to find a space where you can take shelter and protect yourself from drafts, since cold and humidity affect you more when you are still. The risks of the cave. In addition to the lack of resources, caves pose specific risks, such as landslides and flooding. In some regions, they can even accumulate dangerous gases such as carbon dioxide or methane. There are caves inhabited by animals such as bats, insects, and reptiles. Although most of these animals do not pose a threat, encountering some species could be risky. Throughout history, many explorers have experienced extreme situations in caves. Some were trapped for days without knowing if they would get out alive, facing fear, cold, and lack of food. Confinement experiments. In the 1960s, researcher Michel Sifry decided to spend several months in a cave to study the effects of isolation and lack of light. During his experiment, Sifry lost track of time, and his circadian rhythm changed dramatically, showing that extreme confinement has profound effects on the human body. Simulation of a day in the cave. To understand the experience of surviving in a cave, imagine a typical day in which we try to meet our basic needs. One of the first objectives is to find water. Once we manage to find a small leak, the next step is to purify and preserve it. Then, we look for a place to protect ourselves from the cold and humidity, improvising a shelter with the few tools we have. As hours pass in silence and darkness, the mind starts playing tricks. The lack of stimulation creates a feeling of confusion, and the isolation makes us question whether we will be able to get out. After analyzing all the physical and psychological aspects, we can say that surviving 7 days in a cave is possible, but extremely difficult. The main challenges are in water conservation, body temperature regulation, and mental state. For anyone wishing to explore a cave, it is essential to have prior knowledge and proper equipment. In addition, you should always inform someone of your location and have emergency plans. Caves are fascinating and mysterious environments that challenge us physically and mentally. Survival in them depends on both our ability to adapt and our preparation. Would you be willing to spend a week in a cave? What would you do in such a situation? Leave us your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more content on adventure, science, and survival.